Hi guys, welcome to your grade 9 analysis of Lady Macbeth in preparation for your English literature and arguably an A-level exam. This is going to focus on individual words in terms of hitting the grade 9. Please pause the video where necessary because sometimes I can talk quickly. We need to look at judicious quotations. There's obvious quotations associated with Lady Macbeth. We have to make sure that our analysis is better than everybody else's. Now, I'm going to start with this quote, often gets missed. Act 1, Scene 5, Lady Macbeth reads Macbeth's letter. You can argue that that is the unison of the pair, because obviously their relationship is going to disintegrate. Quotation though, once she's finished the letter, is thy letters have transported me beyond this ignorant present, and I now feel the future in the incident. Okay, so this is going to be an example paragraph, so pause the video if you need it. But basically, we've got a lot of key words. We don't want to see it, Lady Macbeth's evil, because everybody's going to see it. So if we can get in terms like Machiavellian and villainess, then again, it's a heightened answer. If you need to research Machiavellian, then do so, but basically you're going to get something like she's cunning. Now, her flaw, much like Macbeth, who's our tragic hero, is that they are both excessively ambitious. Now, the problem in terms of that is that they defy the great chain of being. That's your context. If you haven't done the great chain of being, there's a video on my channel with that. Essentially, it's an order. God is at the top, then the angels, then the monarchs, then the humans, and then obviously all the way down to animals and your plants. You don't disrupt that order. So when Lady Macbeth and Macbeth do try to take the place of a monarch, then there's a problem and they need to be punished, and they are punished via death. Now, to the quote. You want to look at things like transported, because there's a suggestion there that the supernatural prophecies of the witches have moved her in terms of ambition, physically moved her, mentally and morally. Also beneath the surface though, again for that deeper meaning, and look at your lexical field of time, future, instant and present, there's a desperation for Lady Macbeth. You know that there's something missing in her life, a child. She's looking for validation somewhere else. Unfortunately, she looks for it through the crown. She speaks in the iambic pentameter in Act 1, Scene 5, Act 1, Scene 7, Act 2, Scene 2, and the banquet. Then she speaks in prose at the end. Again, everybody's going to say that. We need a reason for that. I've put that it intensifies the influence of the witches. It's up to you, interpretation. Some critics argue that actually, because of her language being supernatural, when she says things like, come spirits, tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, that she is a witch herself. So that's a good interpretation. But again, and look at that key word that the examiner's going to love, because it's a different interpretation. There's a juxtaposition in present and future, and that is the two personalities of Lady Macbeth. It is the conscious versus the subconscious as well. It's the Lady Macbeth who has a little bit of power now, but it's all a front and it's a little bit fake. And we have the Lady Macbeth in Act 5, Scene 1, it's the subconscious of her, who's weak, mentally weak, and we see her real thoughts coming to life. So again, what you've got to think about is there's an insecurity there. The insecurity is, at this current time, I'm a childless wife to the soldier Macbeth. In the future, I'm a queen. So again, pause that if you need a lot of information there. Next one. Again, key quote. Everybody's going to pick it. What do we say? Too full of the milk of human kindness and unsex me here are the next two. Now, too full of the milk of human kindness. Remember, if there's an obvious explanation, and it's that she knows he's weak or he's too kind to disrupt the great chain of being because he's loyal to King Duncan. But again, we've got to start thinking, well, she's criticising his masculinity, which would be frowned upon in a Jacobean society. But then we've got to go further. Look at your noun, milk. Now, milk we associate with the breast. Breastfeeding a child, nurturing a child, the one thing that she can't do. So once again, that quote, whilst it tends to show us his weakness, it's actually reflecting hers as well. And it's that avoidance of the childless Lady Macbeth, which comes from the reference of having plucked the nipple from its boneless gums and dashed the brains out. She, we know, defies anything feminine, wants rid of her genitals, which we're going to come to in Unsex Me Here. And Unsex Me Here links to this idea that he's got milk off his mother, it's made him weak, I can't have the breast, I can't have any other thing that is associated with the female. Unsex Me Here is what I'm going to do now, so listen, because, again, simple quote, therefore I'll have an obvious explanation. She is demanding, it is an imperative, okay? It is an imperative. She is demanding that the spirits, because she's addressing the witches here, unsex her, remove her femininity. Now, what you want to start thinking about is, it's disturbing imagery, obviously, but it juxtaposes, come to my woman's breast and take my milk for gall, because that juxtaposes the milk of Macbeth. So let me just explain that again. We've got the image of Macbeth full of milk equals kindness. We've got an empty Lady Macbeth full of gall, which equals something cunning, something Machiavellian. And you can see that the two are in conflict with one another. And actually, their relationship, remember, is going to disintegrate until she becomes a spectator at the banquet, where he is in fact more powerful. Again, this is still unsexed because there's a lot to say. It's obviously, we need to take that symbolic because the physical description of it is straightforward. It's a reminder that she blurs the boundary of gender. It reminds us of the things she can't do, which is to bear children. Problem being, guys, the prophecies have said that Banquo's children will succeed. So there's the next reminder that her power has a limit. She can't have the children, her children will therefore never succeed, but Banquo's will. She looks for validation elsewhere, which I said, unfortunately for her, is the crown. And remember, we're reminded of the loss of the child, and I have given suck. It's past tense, it's already happened. We would assume the child has been lost. Okay, next one. Chastising with the valour of my tongue. Again, great quotation, love it. What do we see? Literally, okay, if we take it literally, which is always a good place to start in terms of the examiner, then she's confessing that she's persuasive. Again, brilliant, C grade, we've got to be better than that. You've got to go deeper with your meaning. Now, the abstract noun valour juxtaposes the verb chastise. Again, literally, chastise means to correct, to punish, or to reprimand. So we, as a reader, have got to be asking ourselves, well, what is she correcting? The kindness that Macbeth has, she's correcting it so that he will commit the murder. What is he reprimanding him for? Not being ambitious enough to kill the king. And unfortunately, you could essentially argue that the witches and Lady Macbeth are driving forces for his over-ambition because they like spur him on. Again, he's reprimanded by her, which we don't expect in that type of society. And again, it's the power. We've got a power balance or imbalance. It's Lady Macbeth, then it's Macbeth, which will inevitably swap, and she becomes a pointless, insignificant woman who dies. Massive, arguably the most famous Lady Macbeth quotation. Everybody knows it, even my dad. Out, damned spot. Again, there's an obvious explanation, washing the blood, the guilt. We've got to be better. So, how are we better? The relationship has now disintegrated. So as it's disintegrated, she is isolated, she is powerless. She's mumbling on, wandering around the castle, speaking in prose, remember. The only Shakespearean protagonist in a tragedy to die speaking in prose, highlighting her insignificance. Now, she's suffering, she feels guilty, absolutely. She thinks there's blood on her hands, we've got her. We need to be better. We need to see that this is the true Lady Macbeth. So when I mentioned earlier there's two of her, this is the real one, the subconscious. We've tapped into everything actually that she does think. The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? The confession of everything that they've done. It's also appearance versus reality. In the earlier scene she mentions the false face is mentioned, the serpent and the flower are mentioned. Now it's none of that, it's none of this metaphorical language, and she's mumbling on, and her sentences, if you look closely, are highly fragmented with punctuation, hesitation. She's vulnerable, we know that. She's mentally unstable, and she's starting to now question morally her own actions. We're going further. This is your language, this is your grade 9 stuff. Out is an imperative, connects us to the beginning of the play where she's shouting imperatives at the witches, come, tend on mortal thought. Unsex me here. Desperate again. It links her desperation for power now to her desperation to not feel guilty, not feel remorse for the blood to be off her hands. So we've got the imperative. The prose, as I've said, shows this massive downfall of Lady Macbeth. Remember, the only Shakespearean character to die like that. But we also want the adjective damned because it's religious for us as well. Now, if you are damned in religion, it is eternal, it's forever. You are being punished and reprimanded for something you've done, which in this instance for Lady Macbeth is sinning. What has she done? Defied the great chain of being by stepping out of her rule. Okay, you could argue she's being punished as well for the unsexing at the time in society, which would have been highly uncommon. As I've said, eternal punishment again. Think about a biblical reference there. The fact that because she doesn't repent her sins, then she's doomed by higher powers. This is on all of my videos because I do think it's a key point, and I've mentioned it, so I don't think I need to read this bit to you. But what you can mention again is iambic pentameter, remember, diddle, up, down rhythm that Shakespeare created based on syllables. It's up and down, it's up and down. You could potentially argue that her speaking like that at the beginning is subtly forewarning us that she is unstable. And again, the idea that she dies speaking in prose is hugely significant in the sense that it shows her insignificance and her subconscious is coming into play. Last quote I'm going to look at is obvious again. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. We've got to be careful here, not say the obvious. Excuse me. It's appearance versus reality. She is duplicitous, hard word to say, if you can get that, as in two different things. Innocence, serpent. You want the Bible here. Okay, you also, not only do we want the Bible here, we want Eve, Adam and Eve in the Bible, because the serpent is linked to temptation. Eve was tempted by the serpent to eat the apple. All of mankind are then punished for her behaviour. So again, the serpent that she speaks of is her. She is going to punish herself and Macbeth by defying order. Also, and this is what a lot of kids will miss, it's directly linked to Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder Plot, which was happening when Shakespeare decided to write the play. So essentially, when they tried to kill King James I and they're unsuccessful, he rewarded the people that found it out with a coin, and on the coin there is a flower with a serpent underneath it. So again, we've got that idea that you do not commit regicide, you do not try and kill a monarch, because you will be punished. In this instance, obviously, we know Lady Macbeth dies, Macbeth is going to die. Again, though, that quotation is detailed in both of my other Lady Macbeth videos. This is again for your grade 9. Remember, Eve, temptation. Lady Macbeth is tempted to royalty. Potentially the lesson there is that we shouldn't be tempted to things that aren't necessarily ours, ethically or morally. This was just grade 9. There's obviously loads of other things you can see about Lady Macbeth. There's poor spirits in my ear. There's lots of quotations. I just want to do a couple of judicious ones. Please pause the video where you need. If you need anything else, please go on my YouTube channel. Just type in my name. There's a whole playlist on Macbeth, poetry, Romeo and Juliet. There's over 210 videos. And a massive good luck in your English literature exam.